Hi there folks, welcome back to the IB and Andy Fishing channel. I hope you're doing really well. I hope you're getting some fishing done this summer. It's been a pretty brutal one weather-wise so far here in the UK, but in between the rain, in between the showers, there's some really good fish out there to be caught, so make sure you find some time to go out and do some fishing. No chance for me to do any fishing today, unfortunately. We had loads of rain again last night, all the rivers rose. What it does mean is that I've finally got time to crack on with one of the reviews that popped up in the previous video. You guys noticed a couple of rods that we've been using that we've had on test for a wee while now, and we are ready to talk about what could possibly be two of the best budget fly rods on the market at the moment. So let's crack straight on with that one. And the rods I'm talking about are the Shakespeare Oracle 2 river rods. Now, unusual this one in that I'm going to do a review here of both of these rods at the same time. The reason for that is at the price that it probably doesn't warrant a whole review on its own. They're quite similarly spec'd out anyway in terms of how they come, so I thought rather than do two separate videos and confuse it too much, we'll just bundle it all into one and we can talk about the two rods together. As you'd have seen there, I've had the 9-foot 4-weight and I've had the 10-foot 3-weight on test. Had these for a good few months now, using them quite a lot during the winter for the Grayling fishing and then a fair amount this season trout fishing as well, both using myself and having my guiding clients use them as well, so I've got to know these rods really well. As always, I think what we'll do here on the review is we'll take them out of the tube, we'll have a quick look at them, we'll go through the specs that Shakespeare give you on their website, and then after that I'll talk about my opinion on the sort of specs of the rod and how they're fished. So I think we'll pick up one of the rods first. We'll pick up the 9-foot 4-weight first because we're just going to go through sort of what they've got as they come out the tube. And I guess that means the first thing we've got to talk about is the fact that they come in a nice hard Cordura tube. It's got a shoulder strap on there as well, and an arm strap, so you can carry and buy that if you want. As you know, with me, as soon as my rods come out of the tube, they very rarely go back in them again. But if you're travelling around, if you chuck them in a suitcase, or if you're just going to leave one in the back of your car, it's got a nice hard tube there to keep it safe for you. Let's pop this one out. 4-piece rods, as you'd expect these days. The vast majority of the fly rods on the market are 4-piece. Now, I'll be honest, in terms of how Shakespeare talk about the package of the rods, what you're getting when you buy them, there's not a whole lot of information out there. I'm actually looking at the Shakespeare European website at the moment on my phone, and it gives very little information. So we're just going to work with what we've got, and then we'll talk about it more broadly afterwards. So right down at the very butt end here, we've got a single nut, black, screw-threaded, up-locking reel seat. I can't tell you what material it's made out of, I can't find any information about that at all. All I can really tell you is it's metal and it's black, and the rest of it I can't find out. Above that though, there is quite an attractive little wood spacer there. It's a nice touch. For a budget rod like these to have a really pretty little wood spacer like that, I quite like that. The cork handle on the rod here is a half-wells handle. Pretty standard stuff from Shakespeare, exactly what you'd expect. Coming up here onto the blank itself, we've got a little keeper ring on there. We've got all the cosmetics for the rod, telling you exactly what it is. Oracle 2, River, 9-foot 4-weight, Shakespeare branding, and on the opposite side, we've got slightly more technical stuff. There's a couple of product codes on there and a little bit more detail about the rod itself. Down here at this end, we do have little green tips on the whippings. That's a nice little touch. That doesn't carry on through the rest of the rod, but just down at the butt section here, something nice to look at down at the butt end. Now again, on the Shakespeare website, I cannot find any information out about the material of the rod's made out of, other than the fact that it is carbon. That's all it says. It doesn't give any other information than the fact this is made out of carbon. And at 82 grams for the 9-foot 4-weight and 95 grams for the 10-foot 3-weight, you can tell there they are definitely light enough that they're probably a reasonable quality of carbon. I don't think you're getting the real good stuff here, but they're not heavy rods. It seems like all the rods in the Shakespeare Oracle 2 River range were all finished in this really nice shade of sort of British racing green. It's got a slight flake to it, but it is matte finish. I actually think these look like a slightly more expensive rod than they come out being. A really, really nice colour to the blank. On both rods we come up to the number 3 section. We've got a single line stripper guide on both. I have had a look. It seems like both these stripper guides are the same size on the 9-foot 4-weight and the 10-foot 3-weight. And that's absolutely fine. They don't need to be big guides when we're talking about rods at these sort of line ratings. Dark green whippings right the way through on all of those single leg guides, coming right the way up to the tip section up here, where we've got a fairly large round tip guide on there. No alignment dots, no extra tips to the whippings or anything like that. Fairly no frills finish, but a nice lightweight, slim, good looking blank. Now in truth, other than a completely baffling sort of data sheet on the Shakespeare website that gives you a load of data that's completely irrelevant, and the fact that I can tell you that the Oracle 2 River range of rods start at 6 foot and go right the way through to a 10-foot 5-weight, and it's quite a comprehensive range. That really is as much information as I can find out about these rods. There is very little available on the internet. And to start with, we'll come right the way back down to the very end of the rod. We'll talk about the reel seat. So we'll say the metal on the reel seat feels a little bit tinny, and there are just a few scratches and little marks starting to appear on it where that black anodization, or even black paint, I don't know what it is to be honest, has just started to dent off. It's not affecting sort of the usability of the reel seat at all. It is just one of those things that maybe you'd expect with the sort of budget price rod. They don't feel like the top grade stuff. In terms of the function of them, they've been great. Nothing's come undone. I've not had a reel drop off or anything like that. The wood spacer is both really pretty, particularly on the 10-foot 3-weight actually. These two spacers are quite different, but the 10-foot 3-weight wood spacer is really, really nice. And they've also got a little bit of a recess built in for the reel, so it just holds it a little bit more securely in place. You want to know that your reel's not going to fall off your rod, and that has not been a problem with either of these. Coming a little bit further up to these half-wells handles, and this is where we sort of did find a bit of a problem, and perhaps one of those problems that sort of suggests the cost of the rod, the price of the rod. I'd probably use these rods about equally. If anything, I might have used the 10-foot 3-weight a little bit more than the 9-foot 4-weight, because I used it quite a lot over the winter for grayling fishing, but I don't think there's much in it, I really don't. The cork handle on the 9-foot 4-weight is actually pretty good. I'd say probably more than pretty good. I'd say it's very good. It certainly doesn't suggest a rod at this price point. There's a few bits of filler in there, don't get me wrong, but by and large, I'd say that cork is pretty high quality. The 10-foot 3-weight is completely the opposite. This is probably some of the worst cork I've ever seen on a fly rod. Again, for the price, I'm not expecting this to be like extra floor grade AAA cork handles. It's not realistic. But the 9-foot 4-weight sets such a high bar for what they can achieve with the fitting on these rods that the 10-foot 3-weight I thought sort of really let itself down. There's an awful lot of filling in there, some of which has already started to come out a little bit. And then you have definitely got some chipping down at the very end here, down where the reel goes in. I've mentioned this on other reviews. Some manufacturers put like a little bit of composite cork at each end of the handle just to make sure that doesn't happen. Now obviously again, with these being cheaper rods, Shakespeare are trying to save a little bit of money, and on these they haven't done it. The 9-foot 4-weight doesn't look like it needs it. The 10-foot 3-weight, the cork handle, it's definitely not of the same quality as the 9-foot 4-weight. Coming up a little bit further, nice to see there's a keeper ring on there, and actually really nice to see a really sort of classy matte finish on both rods. As I say, I think all of the Oracle 2 rods come with this same matte green finish. It looks absolutely fantastic. Perhaps would have been boosted a little bit with some maybe alignment guides on the blank, or some extra little tips to the whippings further along the rod, but again, we've got to talk about the price on these rods. You just look at these things and they don't look like a sub £100 fly rod, and we'll get to the price a little bit later on, but that's where we are with these. They've been used reasonably heavily, there's no great scratches or dents, everything's still intact, both reel seats are still working. I really haven't got too much to complain about here at all. The discrepancy in the cork on the handle is literally it. Other than that, in terms of how they've come and how they've performed, everything is still working absolutely fine. But I guess the big thing here is how have they fished, how have I got on with the rods, and I think we'll start by talking about the 10-foot 3-weight first, because that's the one that's going to have the most questions asked about it in terms of its usability. And I know everyone is going to want to know, is this a euro nymphing rod? Can I use this as a euro nymphing rod? And the answer to that is yes, you can. But I'll caveat that by saying there are absolutely no features on that rod that make it a euro nymphing rod, other than the fact that it's 10 foot and a relatively light action 3-weight. There's nothing about it that's been specifically euro nymphing designed. As it is a perfectly acceptable euro nymphing rod. It's not designed for it, it's not the one I'd pick up first, but you guys have seen me euro nymphing with this rod, particularly at a reasonable range, 3 rod lengths, 35 feet sometimes. It held it absolutely fine. It's not razor sensitive like, I don't know, the Grey Streamflex that we test, or the Hardy Ultralight or something like that, but again, it's significantly cheaper. It hasn't got those features you'd expect, but yes, it is a perfectly serviceable euro nymphing rod. I actually use this quite a lot more during the winter as an indicator nymphing rod from a grayling fishing, because it's got a lovely soft action. It's got a really delicate tip particularly, and when you're talking about hooking those bigger graylings, striking pretty hard because your flies are down deep, being able to flick over a big indicator and a couple of heavy flies actually did a really good job for me. I didn't spend a lot of time casting it conventionally with the indicator. It's not really how I fish the indicator full stop, to be honest. I tend to lob rather than cast. But as a tool for catching grayling on nymphs throughout the winter, geez, I caught a lot of fish on this thing. I spent a lot of time fishing this rod and guiding with it, and I can't remember many instances where we had bump offs or fish fall off. As an indicator rod, I really like this thing. As a Euro nymphing rod, yeah, at a push, by all means use it, it works absolutely fine, but as a light grayling rod, or maybe even as a lighter dry fly rod, I think the 10-foot 3 weight's a really nice piece of kit. The big surprise package here for me though is the 9-foot 4 weight. I don't really know what I was expecting from this when it first arrived, and to be honest, for the first 4 weeks it was here, it just stayed in the tube. I was so busy with work doing other stuff that I was just flat out. I didn't really get much chance to have a look at it. Every time I've been out and fished this rod as a dry fly rod or as a duo rod quite a lot this season, it has shocked me at how good it is. Shakespeare's description of the actions of these rods as being lightweight, medium to fast. Do you know what, even though it doesn't really mean a whole lot, it's probably not that far off. They are both quite delicate in the action. But for the sort of ranges I fish on the rivers around me, the sort of light, delicate action on this 9-foot 4 weight has been absolutely superb as a dry fly rig for the whole season so far. It is a lovely delicate tool, something for if you're fishing kind of sub 50 feet, maybe even sub 60 feet. It loads incredibly quickly, but you don't get a huge amount of counterflex from it. You know, it's not wobbling around after the cast. It sort of recovers really nicely for a rod that's probably A, slightly cheaper carbon, and B, perhaps a little bit heavier in the tip than some of the really expensive rods out there. So to get that recovery rate from this sort of quality of rod, or this sort of price point of rod, was a real surprise. It roll cast absolutely beautifully at multiple ranges. You sort of felt like you could trust it with a roll cast. You just sort of pop that fly out there and it recovers back. It's not wobbling around all over the place, not giving you those weird wiggles down the line. And as long as you don't push it too hard with the overhead, it does that absolutely beautifully as well. It's certainly not a rod for fishing kind of 60, 70 feet. If you're one of those guys who's having to fish real long distances on the bigger rivers, it's probably not the rod that I'd look at as a first choice. There are probably better options out there. I think they do a 9-foot 5 version of this, which might be the better option if you're at this sort of price point. But for the medium-sized rivers, if you're casting, as I say, sub 50, sub 60 feet, it is an absolute wonder rod. Because of that delicate action, I've been able to fish right down to 7x with it, about 2.5 pound breaking strain on the tippets, fishing tiny little midges, tiny little blue-winged olives at this time of year particularly. Again, can't remember many break-offs, in fact I can't remember any break-offs so far with this thing because of that nice soft tip. And then during the mayfly season with the shorter leaders, with the heavier flies, again it's dealt with that absolutely beautifully. I fished it with accurate AFTM 4 and AFTM 5 fly lines. And again, the sort of delicacy of the action means that if you're fishing the 5 weight, you're probably going to be fishing at shorter distances again, kind of sub 40 feet if you're overlining. If you want to fish the slightly longer distances, you drop back down to the 4 weight, and it handled both of them really nicely, to be honest. I probably preferred it with a 5 if I was fishing shorter range or making lots of roll casts. When I did have to stretch it out a little bit more, actually I had a 4 weight line on there that cast absolutely beautifully. So you could use either. Like I said earlier, these are pretty no-frills fly rods. They are quite sort of, I'm not going to say plain, plain's probably the wrong word, but there's not a huge amount been put into the aesthetics of the rest of the rod. Some of the whippings are a little bit globby, you can sort of tell these are cheaper Chinese made rods. But then again, they're not terrible. There's nothing there that you look at and think, wow, this is horrific. I'm just looking at this, there's a tiny little glob of varnish on the keeper ring there. I mean, does it really matter? But I've gone through all of the guides on both of the rods. I can't find anything on any of the guides. None of the whippings are particularly heavy. There's no big bubbles or anything in there. Other than the fact that you can look at them and say this isn't a premium rod, there's nothing there to really put you off as far as the aesthetics of them goes. And you add that onto the fact that the performance of the rods, particularly the 9-foot 4 weight, has been so good. I think Shakespeare's crown as sort of the undisputed king of the budget fly rod range is probably still intact at the moment. The Oracle 2s were a fantastic addition on top of what was a couple of previous really good ranges of rods before them with the agility and the agility rise. Shakespeare are so good at getting this stuff pretty much spot on, and they've done it again with these. They are fantastic fly rods for the money. Now money is something we've got to talk about actually, so I sort of alluded to it earlier. Both of these rods have a British pound RRP of 89.99. So both sub 100 quid. You could buy both of these rods for less than 200 quid and have a bit of money spare for lines, flies, whatever else you need. There's not a huge amount of information about the warranty on these. I don't think you're going to get a warranty like you might do with one of the fancier, more expensive rods, no lifetime warranty or anything like that. But at the sort of money you're talking about, I don't think you really expect it. So just to recap there, the 10-foot 3 weight, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt on the cork handle. Maybe it was just me, maybe I got one that was a bit worse than the others. Can you use it as a Euro nymphing rod? Yes, you most definitely can. I did quite a lot actually. It's not specifically designed for it, but if you're just at the start of your Euro nymphing journey, there's an option there for you at less than 100 quid that will do both Euro nymphing and indicator fishing, and then if you really want to, during the trout season, you can even switch it over and use it as your dry fly rod. The 9-foot 4-weight, absolute cracker this. I was thinking to myself the other day, if I woke up one morning and someone said to me, sorry Andy, but there are no other 9-foot 4-weights in the world, and the only one you can use forever is the Shakespeare Oracle 2 9-foot 4-weight, I'd be like, alright, that's absolutely fine, I don't mind that at all. Really nice rod, really enjoyed using it, great on the duo, but an absolutely fantastic dry fly rod at those short to medium ranges. The cork's much better, it's a little less tip heavy than the 10-foot 3-weight maybe, you'd expect that, it's a shorter rod, and again at sub £100, at sub £90, an absolute bargain. So as you've probably guessed here folks, it is a big thumbs up from me for these two, both the 9-foot 4-weight and the 10-foot 3-weight. Used them lots, got on with them really well, cannot find anything really to mark them down on. Obviously they're not as light as some of the top end rods. The finish, particularly on the 10-foot 3-weight with the handle there's a little wrinkle there, but I mean really, for the sort of money we're talking about, we can't expect these things to be finished brilliantly. What I don't expect for the money is for that 9-foot 4-weight to be just as good as it is. So if you're looking for a spare rod, if you're looking for a rod for a friend or a family member or one of your kids or something to start learning with, God crikey, you would not go far wrong with one of the 9-foot 4-weights. And if the rest of the Oracle 2 River range were as good as this, that is a serious range of fly rods that Shakespeare have come out with. Good on them. So I'm going to put these two down. Guys, thank you very much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. I tell you what, let me know in the comment section if you've got one of the Oracle 2 River Ranger rods. Specifically if you've got one of the other rods from the range that I haven't reviewed here. I know there's quite a few in the range to go at. If they're all as good as these, I'd be really interested to hear it. Thank you very much for watching this review, and I will be back soon again for some more reviews, some more fly fishing and some other stuff very, very soon. Take care folks. Bye bye.